Let's bring in Hollywood divorce attorney David Glass for more on this. David?
People going through divorces are going through some of the hardest times of their lives, and a lot of what they're going through is emotional. And in any divorce, there's a huge sense of loss, and loss of relationship, of money, some friends.
Here we are again for another episode of The Hourglass, where family law and psychology intersect. Once again, I'm David Glass, a certified family law specialist, former psychologist, and the author of Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional, Financial, and Social Life After Divorce. And of course, your host. As I mentioned during our last 7 episodes, more than 50% of all marriages or romantic partnerships fail. They end in divorce or uncoupling. I also mentioned that divorce is unquestionably one of the most traumatic of all life's negative experiences. And right now, in the middle of the holidays, those going through a breakup are having an even harder time dealing with sadness, loss, frustration, anger, which we covered extensively earlier in our holiday series. And also anxiety and fear over the demands the holidays present. What we want to focus on during our show today is how you manage the squabbles over the visitation arrangements with the kids, how you handle friendships with those you had a relationship with when you were with your significant other, and how you handle the in-laws, other extended family members, and joint friends since you parted ways with your ex. We also want to address the holiday blues. We're going to take an inside look at how we can work through them and then introduce some ideas so that you can experience joyful ways to climb out of the doldrums and enthusiastically enjoy the holidays despite the chaos around you. I've given you self-assessment tests along the way in our prior episodes. Today is no exception. Grab your note-taking device. Here we go. Which area bothers you the most as you come upon the following? Number 1, dealing with your ex and the visitation schedule with the kids. Number 2, handling your former in-laws and your friends, like knowing what to do this year with visits, gifts, things like that. Number 3, handling your child or children's conflicted emotions about going back and forth between parents. Number 4, fearing you will slide into a depression you think you won't be able to handle. You may be concerned about one of these issues or all of them. No one's judging you. What I want you to consider and remember is that each one of these issues does not come with a one-size-fits-all solution. Also, I'm hopeful you will be open to flexibility, like if you have to give a little with the visitation schedule. In addition, you may have to decide that the holidays are finally the appropriate time to cut ties with some of your ex's family or perhaps with your mutual friends. I always recommend therapy to any client who has the least bit of anxiety in making decisions on how to handle any of these situations well ahead of the holidays. Do so if you can, because the holidays for you and those you're close to and want to stay close to should be your first priority. If you have to let go of some of those who you and your ex were close to, do it diplomatically and with grace and compassion. You can send a note wishing them well for the holidays, gently letting them know the changes you're making this year are ones you think are the best all the way around. Then wish them well and mean it. You can't be blamed for saying something like, "I've made the decision to change up our traditions as I move on and move forward with the new changes in my life, and I no longer feel it's appropriate to celebrate together or to exchange gifts between us. But I certainly wish you the best for the holidays." Be honest, but kind. I have seen a lot of emotional explosions over the holidays when breaking up with others connected to you and your ex can come back to bite you, especially if you and your ex have children together. There will be weddings, graduations, and other special events where you're likely to run into those who are now or will be mostly part of your past. Wear the white hat, always. Be the bigger person. The most important thing you want is to feel good about yourself. Self-esteem is going to be important over the holidays and beyond. You want to do all you can to feel better about yourself. You also don't want to have any regrets 5, 10, 20 years from now. Most of all, put the kids first. Most of them don't like going back and forth over the holidays either. They are another reason why you should wear the white hat. They will respect you for being flexible with your ex or asking them their preferences before considering your own. Over time, you'll look back and be glad you handled yourself well. Look, I know a lot of this causes depression and sadness. I know the holidays are hard. If dealing with your down mood seems too hard to deal with, though, if you're beginning to crash, get help immediately. Don't try to avoid your depression. Attend to it with a qualified mental health professional. If you're having any thoughts of suicide, you need to sound the alarm. There are many facilities out there with people who are happy to help you. Call 988. Know that you are not alone. Likewise, if any of the children, family members, or others close to you indicate that they are hopelessly despondent, don't wait to see if they're going to pull out of it on their own. You need to take charge. Get them help. Now. We always talk about time on this show, and taking time out of your busy schedule to attend to any of these issues is well worth it. Let's get back to you for a minute with ways to help you stay level and centered and ward off the holiday blues. One of the suggestions I want to make is that you write down the things you need and want to spend time on, and those you wish you didn't have to. The end game here is to scratch as many "I wish I didn't have to deal with that" items off the list completely. To reinforce your push toward the positives, write down how much time the negative things are going to rob you of. Keep your negative time to an absolute minimum. Think about all the wonderful things that you can do with that precious time. All right, enough lecture. Let's get to our guests for today's show. They're going to address some of the aspects of the holiday blues. First, we have with us Dr. Jennifer Franklin. Dr. Franklin is with Open Door Therapy and is a licensed psychologist by trade and a self-professed anthropologist by nature. We're talking to her via Zoom today since her center is located in North Carolina. Dr. Franklin has an interesting background and a unique approach to her work. She's here today to give our viewers some solid suggestions on how to beat the holiday blues. So tell us about yourself, Dr. Franklin. What's your background? What's your training? And what does your practice encompass?
I am a licensed psychologist. I practice in North Carolina and California, and really the bulk of my practice focuses on helping people with what I would say is nervous system dysregulation. Okay. And that includes anxiety, trauma, and what I really focus on are like physiological symptoms that go along with those things, and that sometimes seem like they don't go along with those things. And that includes irritable bowel syndrome, chronic pain, all kinds of different digestive problems that are referred to as disorders of gut-brain interaction.
Great. And what kind of approach do you bring to it? An eclectic approach, a dynamic approach, a cognitive behavioral approach?
I would say it's a number of those things. And, I have a lot of different trainings in my background. So I have a strong mindfulness training. I have, some experience in cognitive behavioral work through mindfulness, a mindfulness-based approach. Yeah. And then more of my work has been focused on experiential or more somatic approaches.
I've heard a lot said and written about the holiday blues. Can you give us just a quick definition? What does it mean to say someone is suffering from the holiday blues?
Well, I think it means that they're starting to feel a little down or depressed or anxious, maybe also about the holidays, about the things that are involved in the holidays and what it means.
Right. And so when does these things start coming on? Is it this an August thing? Is it after Halloween? Is there any clear demarcation for when the holiday blues tend to start up?
I don't think so. I think that as soon as you start thinking about your holiday plans, you could start feeling a little upset or a little mood change or some tension or anxiety. I think it could happen once you start shopping for people or thinking about shopping for people. I think there's a lot of different ways that this could come up for somebody. So it just depends. Okay.
And what kinds of things do you work on with your clients who come in and their initial complaint is that they're suffering from the holiday blues?
Honestly, I don't think I've ever had anybody come into my practice and say, I'm coming to you for the holiday blues. But it's just something that seems to happen. Like, let me just say it this way. My phone tends to ring more around the holidays. Right. People want to book more appointments, or, if somebody's seeing me on a less regular basis, they might start to see me on a more regular basis when it comes to the holidays.
Gotcha. Okay. So then as they're coming in more often or calling more often during the holidays, how do you help people deal with these issues?
I think it really depends on what somebody's experiencing. It's very individual. If somebody's, first of all, we have to understand, what might be activating the holiday blues for them. Is this something that happens every single year? Is it more seasonal affective, right? Is it, the clocks change, it gets darker earlier, and that has some kind of effect on us, as it does for many people. So is it more that? Is that where the problem begins? Or, is it that plus maybe thinking about going to a particular holiday event and thinking about the people who are going to be there and how those interactions have been in the past? Is it that you've been through a breakup and you're thinking about what the holidays are like without that person in your life, without showing up with that person at event? And so it just really depends on what somebody's experience is, how you help them to deal with it.
We had a previous guest on the show talking just about meditation and a little bit about mindfulness. How do you incorporate meditation and mindfulness into your practice?
Gosh, I've I've been doing that for about 20 years. And I've kind of, the way that I work that in now is, first of all, we're practicing mindfulness in some capacity a lot of the time when we're working together. So mindfulness is a state of consciousness, and we're kind of entering into that state every so often as I, invite people to experience what's happening in their minds, in their bodies, and emotionally. And so I think that just naturally happens in the work. But I think if somebody's interested in starting a mindfulness meditation practice, or if I think starting a mindfulness meditation practice would be helpful, then I can certainly offer guidance or direct people to group classes or books to help. And a lot of guided meditations you can find online and in a lot of different places nowadays. There are also ways that I like to help people take meditation off the cushion, is what it's called. And I actually really like helping people to do that, because a lot of times people practice meditation and they get so much out of those minutes that they're sitting, but then they don't necessarily understand how to apply what they're learning on the cushion to their everyday lives. And so I like really helping people to make mindfulness, to learn how to practice mindfulness in their everyday lives, and how to make mindful decisions, and how to just incorporate mindfulness living into their day-to-day.
Do you have any tips for people who might be coming into the holiday season feeling down about whatever's bothering them, whether it's changes in their lives, being able to celebrate traditions, or having to find new traditions? Do you have a couple tips for them to try and get them through it?
Well, I think it's really helpful if people can take some of the stress and pressure off of themselves during the holiday season, because the holidays do tend to bring hubbub, right? There's rushing, and there's just a lot of pressure to, people sometimes feel a lot of pressure to get the right gifts for people. And I think that if we can just take some of that pressure off, that in and of itself is really helpful. So, and you can do that by just really thinking about what you really need to do. If you want to kind of tailor things down to what you absolutely need to do versus what you would like to do. And sometimes what we would like to do and the way we would like to do things would be more time consuming and would be more taxing. And so just really accepting that, I have certain time constraints, and to not do more than what is actually realistic, or what you care to do, because you can only do so much. So I think that's really helpful. I also think that, if the holidays tend to be a sad time, or, if there tend to be difficult relationships that make the holidays hard, then I think making sure to surround yourself with a lot of people in your life, in your day-to-day, that you have good relationships with. So if you're spending, a good chunk of time with relatives that don't make you feel so good, maybe, work in some time with some other people in close proximity, or even mixed up there, so that you have some breaks, and then you kind of have some good connection. happening as well.
Right, that split between the family that you're born into and maybe the family that you make yourself.
Just staying connected to the people who really love and care about you and support you, and that you feel really safe being yourself around, right? Not everybody can say that about all of their relatives.
Yeah.
So we want to just stay connected. And even another tip is maybe letting some of those people that really do love and support you, that you do feel you can be your authentic self with, to let them know ahead of time, hey, the holidays are a tough time for me. I tend to get down. I tend to feel sad. I tend to feel lonelier. I tend to feel, upset when I go to my family's house, and to, would it be okay if I reached out to you? Even on Christmas Day, if I did that, would you be able to respond to me, even in a text message? Just let me know that you're there, that you're with me in spirit.
Right.
So to set that up ahead of time so that people aren't surprised, and they know that, if you're reaching out, you might actually really need the extra support.
Yeah, great idea. I mean, when I got divorced 14 years ago, I preempted it by sending out an email to the most important people in my life: my parents, my sister, my best friend. And I basically just said, listen, this marriage isn't working. I need to get divorced. Here's what I need from you going forward, and here's what I don't need from you. I don't need to hear all the negativity about my soon-to-be ex-spouse or how you saw it from the beginning, but these A, B, C, D, and E are the things that I definitely need from you. And
That's a great thing to do.
Their response was overwhelming. Everyone was ready to help, and later on told me that they were grateful because they didn't know really how to respond.
I love that you did that. That is so awesome that you took that step of setting it up for yourself with your family, right, and really letting them know your boundaries, like this, okay, this, right, not okay.
Right.
Right. And I think if you have a family that would be receptive to that kind of direct communication, great. Otherwise, you could have more one-on-one conversation with relatives to say hey, I really need you. This is really hard for me. And, I anticipate this happening. So can I blah, 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 if I need to? Can I pull you in a room, and can I have a hug sometimes, or whatever you need to ask for?
Right.
That it's a low risk to ask somebody for something that you need, then ask. By all means, ask.
And so you mentioned up top about dealing with people with gut pain and irritable bowel syndrome. What kind of resources do you have available for them?
If people do have gut problems, or the kinds of things that I'm really focused on working with, the name of my website is don'thateyourguts.com. And there's a lot of education there for patients and for psychotherapists working with patients who have disorders of gut-brain interaction, or chronic pain, or, one of a number of different symptoms.
Thanks also for all the background you gave us about the holiday blues and about incorporating mindfulness into our everyday actions, not just reserving it for sitting on top of a mountain or sitting on a cushion, as you put it. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Our next guest is actress Mindy Sterling. I recognized her right away as the fabulous Frau Farbacina from the Austin Powers trilogy. But if you look up her IMDb profile online, she looks to me to be the hardest working woman in show business. We've got her here today with her son Max, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the difficulties she had post-divorce in being a single mom. Max himself is a creative, inventive, and dedicated podcaster, and he soon will be the host of the Wrestling Genie podcast. And in the meantime, he does all of the social media for himself and for his mother. So, Mindy and Max, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
How old was Max when you got divorced from his father?
14, right?
14, 15.
I think it was around 14.
Yeah.
Yes, 14. And did not have a clue that it was coming, neither one of us.
Neither one of us, yeah.
Right, so it was sort of a shot in the dark.
Sort of shot in the dark. Was brought into the living room one day. Dad said he would be gone for a while. He was gone for a year. And then, yeah, that was sort of it.
And so what were some of the difficulties, Mindy, that you faced with suddenly finding yourself as a single mom?
Well, I mean, not only was I a single mom of a boy, but Max has autism. He's on the autistic spectrum.
Right.
And so I felt a lot of pressure to do most everything. So I was going to get Max most of the time, and also dealing with just going through a divorce and thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? I was married for almost 20 years, and you do start to think, who's going to be at my funeral? Who's going to take care of everything?
Yeah.
And you start getting really dark. And I remember we had friends that lived downstairs from us in this apartment complex, and I would go down there and I would sob and I would sob, and I remember her saying, you cannot let your son see you lose control like that. And so when I came up, I had to try to, keep it all together. And
She did a really good job of that.
oh, thanks. And I think one of the hardest things was when Max would go to his father's, and who his father was living with at the time, every other week.
Every other weekend.
And the holidays.
Holidays were...
Yeah, you have to, you do. You have to negotiate the holidays. And you're like, well, what do you mean I can't have them Saturday morning? That's the morning we get up and we should gifts. Right. Oh, okay. So it was never like a battle. Like he wasn't forceful about, well, I have to have this and blah, blah. But that was part of our agreement. Okay, so we'll work things out. Whenever I did not have Max, it was really hard on me.
Right.
Really hard on me. I don't know how he felt, but you seem to deal with it a lot better.
Again, a lot of the emotional stuff doesn't tend not to faze me because of the way my brain's wired. But But yeah, definitely, it was a very interesting experience just having sort of two lives.
Sure.
In a sense.
And going back and forth.
Well, and he had another woman with him.
Yeah.
So Max had to adapt to that whole thing too.
Yeah.
From your experience, what was it like going back between the two, back and forth between the two households? Were there very different rules or ways of living, or what was the style of the two households?
Without getting too much into it,
sure.
It was very different in terms of personalities, in terms of in terms of how every house functioned, and just what the sort of stuff we did, the sort of personality my mom has, I was not getting over there.
Sure.
Oh, you mean my lovely personality? My love and yes. So, he's been with me, and, and we make each other laugh. And so, of course, I'm the mom. And then he goes to this other, unit, and she was very different.
She was very different, yes.
When I got divorced 14 years ago, my daughters were 10 and 12. And I remember the hardest thing for them, other than getting over the idea that their parents weren't together, was going back and forth between two different houses. Max, what was that like for you, getting used to living in two places?
Well, again, it's just two different types of people, two different types of situations. It's very, very, while emotionally, due to my disability, my stuff, I was able to not really be bothered by it. It's just, it's very noticeable how different things are when it comes to different sets of people, and how, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it was having him, leaving every other, week or something. Yeah. And what am I going to do with myself now? Oh my God, this is my son. And then the holidays, where you had to negotiate.
Sure.
Okay, you'll get him, Christmas Eve, and I'll get him Christmas morning, and it was like it shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have to do that. And so I had a really hard time with it. And that's when somebody gave me a dog. It's true. Somebody brought me a dog and said, this is your dog, because we know how hard it is for you. And I was like, oh my God, I have cats. I've never had a dog. Well, we think that you should. And I was like, all right, well, can I try it first before I commit? I don't know. And I remember his dad dropped him off,
And this dog was a complete surprise to me.
Right.
Mom did not contact me.
And Max did not like surprises.
I do not like surprises.
So he was pissed.
So I was very pissed. And then my mom asked if we should keep it. And I said yes, of course, for her.
Well, I said no because I said, look, if you don't like it, then I can take it back.
Mind you, she was lying.
But now, of course, it's like part of the family, and
Sure.
I mean, it has helped me a lot. But boy, I think for moms, I mean, I only had one child, and it's different. But and we were so close.
Yeah.
So that was definitely hard on me. Not as hard on him in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then things changed as time went on.
But as I said, we're not going to get into that.
We're not going to get into that. No.
But you did bring up, my girls were young teenagers, and you were a teenager, and teenagers can sometimes be difficult to deal with as a parent, and vice versa. What kinds of issues did the two of you have getting used to this post-divorce world?
I was never that good in school with schoolwork and all that sort of stuff, so it was just... My dad was always more of the pusher on that front compared to my mom, so it was there was definitely battling over that. There was...
Well, I think, too, just like being a teenager and
Just
having moods and having autism.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me because I, wanted things to be done, like this. And now you have to do it and da-da-da-da-da-da. So I didn't have any support.
Yeah.
She wanted a tighter leash than I was willing to give her.
Right.
Yes. And so when we would have these fights, I felt like I'm alone, and I would literally I'm going to call your father. Mm-hmm. It's probably the only time that I ever talked to him,
right.
is you need to take him. He needs to get out of here now because it's driving me crazy. And so that was always the bump.
And I always had issues controlling my anger too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing therapy was involved at some point for each or both of you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, when I was much younger, before the divorce, I had a therapist, and then I left them. And then during the divorce, I had 2 different therapists, just a little bit ways apart. And my mom came in for both of them to talk with. Dad never came in, really, for him. But really, therapy was definitely helped.
Well, I think it helped for a while for you, and then you realized that was not for you anymore.
Yeah, I didn't feel like a lot was getting done after a point. It was like, I need to solve these problems on my own. I can't have some. Unfortunately, I'm running into the same wall.
Sure.
Yeah, and he didn't. He just thought you should be fixed. We should all be fixed by now.
Right.
So it was like, okay, well, I'll still go, and you, but it was always, for me, it was even when in my marriage, it was like, we'll do couple therapy, blah, blah, blah. So I was always the self-help person.
Sure.
And thought it would be beneficial for him. And we went together because
I just didn't want to be in and out of therapy for the rest of my life. And that was more it. Because apparently when I was diagnosed, originally someone said that.
Yes, one of your I think the first therapist said that, he's got this, and he'll probably be in and out of therapy for the most of his life, which I think everyone is personally.
Right.
They may not talk about it, but a lot of people do that just when you need it. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about, like every single day.
Absolutely.
But so, we went through that. We went through a lot of it just because of, I think, how close we were, and that I had him more.
Right.
It might have been 50-50 in writing, but it wasn't.
Right.
So I definitely had more of that, which I wanted, but at the same time, I didn't feel like I knew what to do all the time. So we did have some really nasty, fights. Yeah.
And that's the surprising thing is it's actually very common with the parent who's closer to the child or children. Mm-hmm. That's where the child feels comfortable expressing the strong emotions. So they go to see the other parent, keep it bottled up, come home to the parent they're closest to, and it all comes out.
True.
That absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
in hindsight, yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, you sort of, to use the term, act up with the person that you know it's safe to do that with.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he knows what he's going to get out of me. And I've always told him I would never abandon him. I still to this day. I will never abandon you. I will never judge you. And I, if anything, I'm like the Jewish mom. I can't
Right.
hug. We need to hug now. Or we have this I call it a little codependent.
Right, sure.
Because I don't date, though I have a lot of wonderful friends. But I enjoy my home life. I enjoy my friends. I enjoy my animals. I enjoy his presence.
And I agree with her. It is a little smothering, but you get used to it.
Aww. And now he initiates.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And you mentioned earlier, I had also the experience when I was first divorced of suddenly being alone in the house. That I looked around and, you expect it and the calendar's that way, but suddenly you find yourself all alone at home. And I compensated by just, setting up appointments. Setting up appointments with friends. Yeah. Something.
I mean, I've always been that person anyway, very social.
Yeah.
So even when I was married, I spent more time with my friends than my ex, and
Right.
it was just the way it was. I mean, I wasn't getting what I needed. He wasn't getting what he needed. So for me, this is, it's okay. I really do love my life now. And though as much as I try to think of you need to get your own place or blah, 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 I'm also enjoying as he's getting older and he is growing and he is changing.
Yeah.
Right? The other day you said
Things are a lot different now than I even was like 2-3 years ago when it comes to like a lot of my stuff.
And he's more helpful. And every day he comes into my room and says, what do you say?
Good morning.
And what else?
Do you need anything?
Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to get that from some guy.
Or from the dog.
Well, I mean, I know what she wants. But no, it's sort of nice. It is sort of nice. And, but holidays are, I think holidays are
Hard for everyone.
for anything, whether you're
Sure.
divorced or not. I think they can be incredibly stressful. I think for me, the hardest thing right now about the holidays with Max is I don't know what to get him. When they were little,
Right.
you used to get them, oh my God, I got to get them this game, and I'm going to get them this, and they get really excited. Now it's like, oh, I guess I'll just get you a
Gift card.
gift card.
An Amazon card.
It's not as exciting,
Yeah. What? Anything else with the holidays? Any advice you could give to our viewers and listeners about getting used to sharing the holidays with your ex-spouse?
Well, we don't really have that any kind of communication, and since Max is older, and he's anytime if he ever wanted to be with him, but it hasn't worked out that way. So I think we have this one little ritual that we do for Hanukkah.
Yes.
Because I'm crazy, and I was raised. With Hanukkah Jewish, but we always had a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was always
We always celebrated both.
we always celebrated both. But I don't know the prayer, and so what we would do is we'd light the candles.
And we would sing. No, we should not.
Oh, you don't
We
wanna
don't
sing?
know if it's.
Oh, can we sing this? Oh, she says we can sing it.
We're good. We're clear.
Sing
Go
it.
ahead.
He wants he's very rules and yes. Okay, so ready?
Oh, Hanukkah, let's light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather around the table, we'll give you a treat. Dreidels to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night to shed as we'd like to remind us of days long ago.
Ho, ho, ho.
One for each night to shed as we'd like to remind us of days long ago.
And sometimes they don't remember the words.
I have to help her.
You have to stumble along, but that's the
But
classic.
we do that. We probably do that like maybe the first 2 nights,
And then
And then we all get too busy to light the candles.
we'll lit the candle. All right, that's all right. We'll just
Don't worry about it. And the classic Jewish Hanukkah song in a minor key. So I understand the two of you do some Instagramming together.
Well, yes. I started it. I initiated it, and for some reason, it was just because he's so funny, and we have this great personality. I love asking him questions. So, I would go, ooh, look at that. Oh, wow. What's that shirt say? And he would just answer me as earnestly as possible. And I'm like, oh, my God, where'd you get that? Oh, and what are you drinking? Are you drunk yet? We would drink together. So all of this stuff, this interview back and forth, or this talking, and I would comment, and he would say things, was always so funny. And we would always end it with, Max, I love you.
I love you too, Mom.
And we would always end it that way. So it became this. We put this on Instagram and Facebook, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, you guys need a show!" And, blah, blah, blah. And oh my God, you're so funny.
And I'm at parties with my mom, and people who I've never met before are coming up to me saying, "We love you."
So all these people, and I'm like, well, the more that we do these, guests as, another podcaster, that helps with building your, team of people. So that's like our little thing is we just make people smile and laugh.
That's great.
And they don't get to see the dark side of us.
Yeah.
Just the fun.
Yeah.
That's great. The dark side feeds the fun
Yes.
side.
Absolutely.
It's been great talking to both of you to find out about your story, to share your story with our viewers, and I'm sure they got a lot out of it.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Next up is a very interesting guest, Diana Shepard, editorial director of Divorce Magazine, a long-running publication that covers everything about breakups and divorce. Full disclosure, I'm happy to be a regular contributor to it. In fact, I'm honored. So, Diana, tell us about Divorce Magazine. How long has it been around?
Well, we launched Divorce Magazine in 1995 because of a couple of divorces. One was my then business partner was surprised by his wife saying, I want a divorce. And I started seeing someone who was in the divorce process with 3 children. And I suddenly realized I was going to be a stepmother, and I had no idea how to do that. Right. So because we had both been in magazine publishing, we just went looking and found nothing out there.
Yeah.
So we decided that we needed to start the magazine that we needed to read.
Amazing. And how has the magazine changed over time, other than the obvious going from print to online?
Right. Well, that's the biggest change. And if you told us that in 1995, we couldn't have conceived of it, even though we actually had a website address then when I still had to spell out HTTP to people. But so that's a big difference. We still do some PDF versions because there's people who don't like to read online still. And then some of the issues have changed, most notably, I would guess, in the last, let's say, since 2020. We've never lived through a time quite like this before. So there have been a lot of changes and people going back, of course, and revisiting child custody and child support because their ex wasn't doing what they wanted them to do regarding COVID. So those really are the biggest changes. But in terms of how you are going to cope, how are you going to help your children, how are you going to have a divorce without going broke, that's pretty similar to what we saw right out of the gate.
So the issues really haven't changed over your 25-year history.
No, because really, when it comes right down to it, somebody going through a divorce wants to know a couple of things. One is, am I going to be okay physically and financially? And am I going to be okay emotionally? Right. And the same questions about their kids if they have kids. And every other question comes back to those. Like if you don't think you're going to be okay financially, you're going to go after perhaps more property than you might otherwise be entitled to, or more child support, or more spousal support, or for longer duration. So it's all about the uncertainty about the future when you thought you knew what the future was going to look like. And if you can get people to realize that they are going to be okay, not everyone is, but if they are, then a lot of that fighting just goes away.
Now, yeah, you mentioned COVID. The result of COVID in 2020 was the second half of 2020 was the biggest year ever for a lot of divorce lawyers here in Southern California. Divorce filings in Los Angeles were up 40%. Did you see a similar rise in your subscribers and viewers?
We saw a sharp spike up in viewership, which might have been a little bit awkward if they were isolating at home and the other partner didn't really know that they were getting a divorce yet. So there might have also been a lot of rapid shutting of laptops, that kind of thing. So people, do a little bit of first poking around usually to see if they can find out some answers about when's the best time, how's the best way to do this, and so on, before they pull the trigger and tell their ex. In many cases, their ex finds out after several other people, including a divorce lawyer, could be a divorce financial expert, depending on what the issues are in it, or a parenting expert. So yeah, absolutely, there was a big spike and a big spike in people looking for just information and help.
And I love your origin story of the magazine. I have a similar story. When I got divorced 13 years ago, I looked for a book about what I would do after I was divorced. What comes after in the next year? Couldn't find it, and over the years kicked it around, and a couple of years ago I wrote a book called Moving On. But that need, when you go looking for something and can't find it, it can be a very powerful motivator.
Especially when you are surprised by not being able to find it. Maybe possibly a little bit less surprising in 1995, but funnily enough, I had come from the immediate magazine I was at before starting this one, was Wedding Bells magazine. And as you can imagine, there are shelves and shelves and shelves full of wedding magazines. And that's all about how to plan one day of your life. To find that there was nothing, like absolutely nothing, to help you plan the rest of your life, and to know what's available to you and how to have a divorce so that you don't become broke financially or emotionally. It was very surprising to us that there was literally nothing out there.
You've obviously had many holiday seasons over the years where you provided content to readers, specifically about getting through the holidays, either post-divorce or just in general. Which of those articles in the feedback you've received seem to be the most popular?
Well, and this may not be surprising to you, but if it has the word narcissist in the title, it tends to be very popular. So I think the most popular one we have, not for Thanksgiving, but the holiday season, is why do narcissists always ruin the holidays? That stands head and shoulders above any of the other ones we've written, with about 50,000 unique page views.
Wow.
But running a close second is an article called Happier Holidays During and After Divorce. Because it is different. It's definitely going to be different. That doesn't mean that it has to be the worst time ever and that you just need to curl up in a ball and wait for it all to stop and to be over. But with some foresight and planning, which is what this article is about, you can have an okay holiday, especially if it's your first one. And for divorced parents, if it's their first one without their kids, that is a tough one. So we always want people to try and plan in advance as much as they can. If they're not going to have the kids, they might want to volunteer somewhere. Volunteering can help your heart in many ways. When you see the need and help to provide some of the need, that can help for some people, maybe it's just getting together with their single friends or their newly divorced friends and having their own Thanksgiving or holiday celebrations. So depends where you're at and what it's about. But if you wait until the morning of, it's probably not going to be a good day for you.
Yeah, definitely not.
The third one, which actually surprised me when I looked at our analytics earlier on today, was 3 holiday tips for adult children of divorce.
Interesting.
So I was a bit surprised by that because I actually didn't realize we had quite as many adult children of divorce.
Yeah.
Although who knows, maybe they're going through their own divorce now too. But that surprised me that came in at number 3 for our holiday tips articles.
Very surprising and maybe not so surprising.
Yes, some from column A, some from column B.
Yeah, and that divorce affects people during their childhoods, during their own adulthoods, when it's their own divorce, in their own adulthoods from their childhood. It's multi-directional.
Absolutely. My parents separated when I was 12, when it was not really the done thing, and they didn't know what to do. And basically, my dad disappeared from my life for several years. Not necessarily because he wanted to, but that's just kind of how it was, or how my mother wanted it to be. So I wouldn't recommend that to anyone unless you have a partner who is abusive. Then you do want them to be a part of their children's lives because you're half them. So if they're the worst person on the face of the earth, the child is going to internalize that they kind of are half the worst person on the face of the earth too. Right. So if we've learned one thing, it's that children actually do need both parents whenever possible.
Before we close out our segment with you, is there any other advice that you'd like to give our viewers about getting through the holidays post-divorce?
Well, I think it's something that they've probably heard a million times at this point in different contexts, but it does get better. However, I would say it doesn't get better unless you are proactive about it. I liken it to, we all know the phrase, time heals all wounds.
Right.
And let's say my tire, I get a nail through one of my car's tires and I get a flat. If I wait for that flat to heal itself with time, I'm going to be waiting for a pretty long time. So time can dull things, but it doesn't fix things. So if you want to feel better about yourself, your life, your children, whether finding new love is on your agenda or not, you need to be proactive about your own healing. And yes, everybody does need to heal. There's a grief process to go through. Some people go through an anger process, the denial process. The famous stages of grief.
Sure.
Pretty similar for divorce too. So just waiting is not good enough. And waiting until Thanksgiving morning or Christmas morning, definitely not good enough. So do what you need to do. Don't wear out your friends. Yes, they can and should be supportive, but they will not be supportive if you speak to them every day about only your divorce and how awful it is. So get a therapist if you need to. Find someone to speak to. Go to, I don't know if group meetings have started again. Have they? Do you know?
Some places they have, yeah.
Yeah. So if you can find a group or even somebody who's at the same stage that you're at, that can be very helpful in your healing process. But you do need to heal in order to have that great next chapter of your life.
Absolutely. Wow. All of that. I asked a question at the end, and you managed to summarize our last 8 episodes. You've really hit on a number of topics in a very helpful way. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, Diana.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure, and thank you for asking me to do this.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to close out today's show the same way we do with every Hourglass episode. As we navigate our way through the complicated waters of the holidays and the issues divorced couples and their children are faced with, we need a little humor to balance out all the tension and stress. Today, we have Lindsay Bebout. Lindsay is a stand-up comic and also the co-host of the Denver Broncos Podcast. Lindsay grew up with divorced parents and has a little bit of advice for us. Lindsay, as I understand it, you're going to share your suggestions on what divorced parents should not do in front of their children during the holidays.
Oh yes, and I had to lower it to 5. I could probably give you 50 because my parents did them all.
Yeah.
But it's okay, it's okay. We've healed.
Sure. So what are your 5?
All right, so number 1, date people who want to buy my love. And what I mean by that is if you're not dating someone who's at least somewhat interested in wanting me to like them, I should not be spending the holidays with them.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I could go on and on about how many men I had to meet from my mom, and they never did that. And not only did I feel like I'm being forced to live with or, spend the holidays with new dad, I'm also now feeling like, and they don't like me. Not only am I stuck with this new guy, they also don't like me enough or care.
Yeah. What are some of the other things?
Number 2, do not complain about the financial stress. I get it. I know divorce is expensive. I know it wasn't what was in your plan, but I am 7 years old and my entire world has been rocked. I don't now need the burden of knowing that you're stressed out about money as well. No, especially during the holidays, absolutely not. It's supposed to be a cheery time. I'm working on enough stuff as is already, please no.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 3 is don't make having 2 Christmases sound like a blessing. That means I don't get to spend Christmas with my dogs. I get it, you're doing the best you can, mom and dad, but this sucks. And there are other ways to make the situation sound appealing other than pretending that getting to split is a good thing.
Right, so having 2 Christmases, one on the day before and one on the day after.
Exactly. Or in my parents' case, I believe at one point it was a week after.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and when you're 7 and there's extra presents at mom's house that you don't get to see for a week, didn't like that.
Yeah, sure.
Number 4, don't get drunk at the family Christmas party and bash your significant other.
Right.
I get he's your ex-husband. He's still my present father, and I don't want to hear about that, especially in front of other people. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that is something that is, I would say, my mom hasn't still completely learned she shouldn't do.
Right.
But it's okay. It's okay. It's better. It's at least not every year.
Sure.
And number 5, similar to the financial stress, but don't complain to me about how exhausting the holidays are. You only see me half the time now. You should have more energy. And when I only get to see you half the time, make it special for me. Don't make me feel like it's a burden. I get it. And especially now that I'm an adult, I understand how hard life is, and especially if you've gone through a divorce.
Yeah.
But no, pretend that it's not, and let's have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, I often say that one of the best results of being divorced is you only have to be a good parent half the time. Exactly. So when you're sitting here telling me that you're exhausted, I didn't all of a sudden become a bigger burden for you. So I'm not double the burden, so you shouldn't be. What's the craziest thing either of your parents did after their divorce?
And during the holidays or just in general?
During the holidays.
During the holidays. So number 1 that I said, with the dating people who want to buy my love, luckily, my parents have gotten to a place now where we can do Christmas together. At one point, my mom was buying my dad a Christmas present. We've come a long way.
Right.
But at the beginning, even though they didn't want to be together, there was this jealousy. So when my dad was dating a woman and she did give us gifts, my mom complained to us about that and bashed them. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm sorry, not a single guy you've dated has even tried or attempted to get me something. And at the time, I remember being bothered by it, but now I look back and it's hilarious just now to think back on you didn't want to date this guy. What do you care? And then the second part is, oh, wow, we've had to work. That affected me more than I realized in my own relationships. But again, we've worked through it. We feel
Right. There's no resentment. There's
no, it's not.
bitterness.
We're fine. I only somewhat bring it up sometimes.
So I understand your parents got divorced when you were in elementary school.
Yes, I was in 2nd grade, so I was 7 years old, and I very vividly remember the sitting down on the couch, time to have a conversation, Daddy's gonna leave for a little bit, and just my entire world being rocked.
Sure.
It's one of those memories that you're young, you don't necessarily, you remember some stuff, but most of it's blurry. I remember that so vividly and just crying my eyes out. But thank God my parents got divorced when I was young. Now I look back.
Right.
Thank God that happened sooner rather than later.
Yeah, sometimes the truth is that when people stay together, quote, for the kids, it could be the worst thing for the kids. Yeah,
and they did try again, and it resulted with my dad yanking my mom's, and this was back when computers weren't like a dime a dozen where you have multiple, pulling the computer out of my mom's house, taking it with him. There was a lot of yelling, and then we had to go to the neighbor's house.
Right.
So.
Wow. So Lindsay, you've obviously been through a lot. You've endured a lot. What have you done to get yourself right, to get yourself on the right road?
So I spent the first, I'll say, 20 years on and off with a therapist who made everything worse. Didn't know that until recently. Right. And just the fact that I said 20 years with the same therapist should be an indication of how awful that was. Luckily, just this last year, I call it my emotional rock bottom. I decided to try something else. I don't know if you've ever heard of dialectical behavior therapy.
Sure.
So I got into that and I started healing. I thought I was only healing from anxiety. Little did I know how much my parents' divorce had affected me and had affected my entire life. And that, for example, the reason I constantly live in chaos is because that's all I knew, is there was yelling and there was fighting and there was, you don't have one home, you go back and forth and all of this stuff. So for anyone who doesn't know what dialectical behavior therapy is, regular therapist, you go, you talk, you kind of try and work through your feelings and figure out a solution. Dialectical behavior therapy is more about learning different skills. So instead of just I sit here and I tell you I'm sad, you would come back to me with all the different tools that I would use to handle my emotions. That was never once brought up by my other therapist. And I'm sitting and like it's everything makes more sense now. And now that I've been able to control my emotions a little bit more, my brain works slower. And what started happening is I was able to look back in the past and see, oh, all of these things have morphed me into who I am now. And a lot of it has to do with my parents' divorce. And I'm sure you get this a lot. You kind of think, well, my parents got divorced when I was 7. That doesn't still affect me 21 years later. The fact that my mom had a never-ending parade of men that were lining up to be my new stepfather, like I didn't realize that once that finally stopped, oh no, like you constantly having people in and out of your house caused a lot of trauma that you didn't realize. And so yeah, I've been able to really look at all these different situations and look at them from a different angle than I had before and point out, I mean, sorry, Mom and Dad, but how much I don't want to repeat the things that they've done, how I would do things differently. And it's just my entire world is so much clearer. Now, the one bummer is I feel like there were things I didn't know I was upset with them for because I didn't understand the ramifications. And now that I do, and now that's something new I need to work through. But overall, it's been great. I feel I'm the happiest I've ever been. Just every so often there is that feeling of like, how did you guys not realize like you shouldn't be bashing the other parent in front of me when I'm 7 and already going through my own heartbreak with you guys breaking up. But I think now that I can look at everything, right? The way my brain works now differently, I think it'll be a quicker healing process because I understand how to work through it instead of just holding on to it.
So DBT for you, it sounds like it helped you separate the emotions from the thinking. And once you handled the emotions, then your logical abilities came back.
Yes, so what we call that is our wise mind, which I did not use very often before. So you have your emotional mind and you have your wise mind, and the point of DBT is to try and get to a place where you can balance both. And so it's not about don't have these emotions, right? You're not going to sit here and say I shouldn't be sad about things that happened with my parents. But the difference is I can look at it from a logical perspective and understand my parents were trying their best. They'd never gone through a divorce before. As much resentment as I have for some of the things that went on, at the same time, my wise mind tells me they were doing their best. They had no idea what they were doing. This was not part of their plan. And so that's what's so great about it is, yeah, you know, I have a lot of times I'll get emotional about things and people will say, you should just be an indifferent person or feel indifferent about that. I'm like, I don't want to be an indifferent person. I like that I'm an emotional person and I like that I can balance the two, and that's what DBT is all about.
Thanks so much for sharing your own journey along with some of your comedy with us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I always close with a song suggestion, one that sums up the show's content. Often, my choices are songs with a reference to time. Today, I've chosen Away from the Sun by 3 Doors Down. The composer, Brad Arnold, says he wrote it about a 3-year period in his life when he was downright depressed, and it seemed like every time he tried to get back up, something else came along to knock him down. He alludes subtly to time, which, if you've been watching, is something I talk about a lot. I don't know how long you've been down about your breakup, but know, even though you feel so far away from the sun, it will shine again. Life goes in cycles for all of us. We have good times and bad times. We all can experience an extended period of time when it seems like nothing's going to get better. But hang in there. It always does. Well, that's it for another episode of The Hourglass. Tune in next week, and in the meantime, use your time wisely.